What's going on, guys? I'm back here with Matt. We're not quite done yet. We've got another little segment here for you on the factory tour. We're going to talk about some last chance trade targets. These are guys you want to get on your team as soon as possible before week one, if you can, because we think their dynasty value might be about to take a big jump up. So we're going to talk about four players. I'll go first and then Matt, back and forth. The first guy I want to talk about is maybe the least exciting of the group, but just a good player. And that's Khalil Herbert. We actually talked about him in the main show just a little while ago, if you want to check that out. But Khalil Herbert is an incredibly good rusher. You might not know, but he was one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL last year on his, somewhat limited volume. But now he's kind of looks like the main show in Chicago. He got all of the first team snaps in their first preseason game. He even caught a pass on third down, which is not something he's been known for in his career. So it looks like there is potential here for Herbert to take on an every down role in the offense. And if that happens, his RB40 price tag is going to be long gone. He is going to jump multiple rounds in startup value if he hits the ground running, so to speak, this season. Matt, do you have any thoughts on Khalil Herbert? Are you a fan?
I've been a big fan of Khalil Herbert since before his rookie draft process even started. And part of the reason, obviously, just being in and of itself that David Montgomery was one of the most inefficient plotters in the NFL. And it wouldn't be overly difficult for such a highly efficient rusher to take over a valuable role there. And Khalil Herbert has done exactly that. Like we were just talking about on the longer episode, he's been incredible with opportunity shares and snap percentages above 50 and 60%. And yes, it's a pretty small sample size over his 30 game career, but we're talking about RB1 consistent level production, over 17 points per game in games over 60% of snaps and over 15 per game in games with 50% of the snaps. So Khalil Herbert with even in a committee, which is what we are assuming, but an opportunity share and a snap share catering and hovering around 58 to 62% is going to
Mhm.
yield an excellent fantasy season and obviously subsequent boost in dynasty value.
Man, Matt coming in hard with the money stats on my guys. You love to see it. He's ready. He's prepared. Obviously, a Khalil Herbert original truther.
Thanks.
Who's the guy you got for me? I think you got a couple of wide receivers for us. Who do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, I went into the wide receiver bag a little bit. Tried to stick around that cheaper ADP of like you can still acquire these guys fairly cheaply, and yeah, you might be able to get them after preseason, but not at this cost. And for me, that guy Rashad Bateman, and a guy that I kind of refuse to be out on. The drafting of Zay Flowers certainly moves that needle towards the negative a little more than the signing of Odell Beckham Jr. did. But as Lamar Jackson quoted just this offseason, and I'll quote the man, the myth, the legend himself, is the wide receiver one on the Ravens is Shoddy B, no doubt. So I've always been a Rashad Bateman truther. Obviously, a what Drew would call a bulletproof prospect coming out of Minnesota, but an incredible alpha prospect coming out of Minnesota with all of the upside and positive accolades and analytics that would suggest he's going to be a 15-point game producer, a 28% target share earner at some point in his career. I love the addition of Todd Munkin into this offense, somebody
Yeah.
that has averaged 33 and a half pass attempts per game as the offensive coordinator at Georgia, obviously winning 2 national titles in 3 seasons. I think it's going to open things up a lot for Lamar. And I do think that as much as I even like Zay Flowers as a prospect, it's that you're talking about a 4-year senior, a guy that was drafted towards the later end of the first round, who is not by any means a perfect prospect. By all intents and purposes, Rashad Bateman would smash him.
Yeah.
In prospect
Oh,
profiles. And
yeah.
it's
Much better
still
prospect. Yeah.
right. And it's still very early in Rashad's career. Like he's obviously dealt with injuries, but as long as he can maintain health, I think it's just a matter of time before we see him break out.
Yeah, I love Rashad Bateman. He's had some positive indicators, in his first and second season when he's been healthy, especially last year. He did get off to a hot start in terms of efficiency. A little bit of weird stuff with the like snaps and the wide receiver deployment, but Greg Roman is gone. We have a new offensive coordinator. And to your point about the passing volume, Greg Roman, I believe, in their first preseason game, ran like something like 82% out of 11 personnel, which is much, much higher than Greg Roman was known to do. So that's a good signal for these guys all getting on the field together. That's a good signal just for the passing game in general. And you don't have to hate Zay Flowers to like Rashad Bateman. They don't
Exactly.
have to be mutually exclusive. Maybe they can't both succeed together, but you can be comfortable with making the bet on either one of them. And I definitely think it's reasonable to make the bet on Bateman based on what we know about him. And he is so incredibly affordable right now, going in that wide receiver 40 range,
I
even
think I had him
later,
at wide receiver
maybe.
43 before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, going after Jonathan Mingo, going after Kadarius
Which is like,
Toney, like it's just,
what are we
he's
doing?
so much better prospect than those guys. He's in an offense that's poised to take a significant leap this year. He has a great quarterback. Like, yeah, it's absolutely time to go and get Rashad Bateman, because if he has a huge week 1 game, so many of those, prior opinions about Bateman are going to come back to life, and he's going to jump 10 spots in wide receiver rankings.
One of my favorite Lamar stats specifically has to do with his passing, because he has so many great, like, it doesn't even seem like these stats exist stats because he's Lamar,
Mhm.
but they're he is ranked in the top 5 of all-time quarterbacks for games with a perfect passer rating. He's the only one of them that's in the NFL still.
That is crazy. That is a crazy stat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
Lamar is so much of a better passer than he's ever been given credit for at any point in his career.
Yeah, it's like people discount him because of the rushing. Like, oh well, he's only a good passer because defenses have to respect the rushing or whatever. Well, it's like, yeah,
So
but
what?
that still exists. Like, it doesn't matter how
Exactly.
we get
That's
there.
why. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's a good one. I really do like Rashad Bateman. My next guy, I should say, is, look, he's a player that I talk about a lot. If you listen to the podcast, I probably sound like a broken record. I truly do not care, because the buy window on Kyle Pitts has been open for months,
Knew it was
and
coming.
you have like, I have to continue banging this drum. Okay, I have acquired 5 shares of Kyle Pitts this offseason. He is now, I think, my most rostered tight end in Dynasty, because he's so darn cheap. He is a 3rd-round pick in startup drafts. He's ranked 37th on Keep Trade Cut as the tight end 3. I just don't think it's sunk in entirely for everyone, and maybe it's entirely sunk in for my audience. But if you're listening and you haven't heard me talk about Kyle Pitts before, he had the best tight end rookie season of all time. He got better in year 2. If you look at his peripheral numbers, if you look at his ADOT, his targets per outrun, his yards per outrun, his yards per reception, his air yard share, everything was pointing to like utter dominance, full ascension. He's taking us straight to the moon. Here's the thing: a third of his targets were uncatchable. He was one of the lowest catchable target rates in the NFL. The Falcons ran a medieval offense that attempted something like 22 passes a game. It was the lowest we'd seen in a decade. And then Kyle Pitts got hurt. Okay. And that's why the fantasy points weren't there. 1, 2, 3, like maybe all of those things are going to be rectified this season. With Desmond Ridder at quarterback, the Falcons already threw much closer to a league average rate, 29, 30-ish attempts per game. The targets are going to be more catchable as well. Marcus Mariota was just truly atrocious last year. And Pitts is healthy from what we can see. And obviously, I'm not projecting a re-injury there. I'm not projecting an injury for any player. So with all that in mind, like, Kyle Pitts is absolutely set up to wreck fantasy football at some point in his career, and I think it could be as soon as this season.
Yeah, I think I might be messing up the exact quote, so I'll just paraphrase a bit. But I think Jacob Sanderson said it best. Like, he said, "I'm quite positive he's going to have the most impactful tight end season of all time. I just don't know when."
Yes. I do remember him saying something like that, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like, I can feel it in my bones that a 1,300 yard, 12 touchdown season
Yes.
is lurking out there. And I don't know when it's coming, but frankly, I don't want to miss it, because at tight end, like, it's not like wide receiver where you can miss on that guy, but you get some other guy that you still, kind of like. Like, it's all or nothing at tight end. If you're not going to get the top 2, top 3 guy, it just doesn't matter. And so I'm aggressively chasing the guy that can give me that. Go ahead and why don't you go ahead and
All
close
right,
things out for us with
I'll
your
round
last
it out
guy?
with kind of 2 more wide receivers. One's more of an honorable mention, I think,
Fair
but
enough.
it's Jahan Dotson and Romeo Dubs for me. I think they're probably the most undervalued second-year wideouts in Dynasty right now at their cost. Obviously, Dubs going around the wide receiver 56 range. Jahan Dotson going around like wide receiver 30. I think Jahan Dotson is, for one of the most disrespected prospects that rounded out a profile with first round draft capital that I've ever
Yeah.
seen, and obviously had an injury riddled season, a quarterback changing season, a difficult development season as a rookie, but still outperformed all expectations. Became one of the best red zone threats in the league. Obviously, one of the highest conversion percentage of any red zone receiver in the league. Scored an insane amount of unsustainable touchdowns, but I don't necessarily
Yes.
need those touchdowns to sustain when you see all of the other peripherals. And somebody that I really like, and there's flaws to everybody's process, but obviously somebody that I trust much more than myself when it comes to analyzing wide receivers and wide receiver breakouts is reception perceptions Matt Harmon. And Jahan Dotson has a historically elite rookie reception perception profile. And there is, we kind of spoke on kind of like elite hit rates of guys that get drafted in the first round, guys that get drafted in the second round.
Yeah.
Wide receivers that finish within the 80th percentile of Matt Harmon's reception perception profile and success rates against man and press coverage in their rookie season have all put up at least 14 points per game at one
Yeah.
point or another. So we're not talking about necessarily he leaps to wide receiver one, but at the bare minimum, I think Jahan Dotson is a consistent, even like Tyler Lockett, where you'll see wide receiver one seasons, but only valued as a wide receiver two. Like, I think he's going to be a consistently undervalued for the production that he gives. So you might not be able to get as much back on the trade market as your obviously investment levels kind of match that, but you might not be able to get a huge upswing on the trade market. But the upswing in production for how much you are investing in, to me, is incredible. And the same can really be said for Romeo Doubs, because I think he's the number two pass catcher there. And again, it's more of a wide receiver three, high end or low end wide receiver two range of outcomes there, because a later round prospect didn't have incredible rookie peripherals, but is popping off a lot in preseason. Some of the news that I've been seeing is obviously very, very positive with Romeo Doubs. Did average more targets per game than Christian Watson did last season. I'll always throw that one in there. So there could be a lot of utility for that guy as a short yardage target on an offense that desperately needs some security blankets, because Jordan Love, even in a small sample size, has proven to not necessarily have the strongest arm.
Yeah, I love the little bonus shout out there. I'm not sure if you can get me excited about Romeo Doubs, but we'll steer the conversation back to Jahan Dotson, because you've got me sold there. He's a guy I've been rising on over the offseason. And it's basically just because his rookie season requires context, right? It had a lot of weird little quirks to it, an injury right in the middle. You have the weird touchdown variance early. But he really came into his own towards the end of the year. The last 5 games specifically, when he was back to fully healthy, he was running all the routes. He was very comparable to Terry McLaurin. I mean, they were basically doppelgangers. Same targets per outrun, same target share, even the same like average depth of target. They were basically the same guy, fantasy points per game. And I think that's really what we're going to see from Dotson. I think he could have a very McLaurin-esque career where he's in that wide receiver 2 zone, always sort of teasing, maybe more upside than that. But right now, he's not priced necessarily like that. And so he's a player you could see come out week 1. He's running all the routes. Maybe Sam Howell is competent. And all of a sudden you see him jump from wide receiver 29 to, wide receiver 23, wide receiver 22. Maybe he jumps somebody like Michael Pittman, who's got a nice inaccurate mobile quarterback now, somebody like George Pickens, who I'm not as sold on. You could definitely see him kind of claw his way up the dynasty rankings very quickly. And so that's somebody you might want to go out and grab now, while his rookie season is the only data that we have. So those are our 4.5 guys you should go out and get. To recap, it's Khalil Herbert, Kyle Pitts, Rashad Bateman, Jahan Dotson. We both are in on that. And Matt also likes Romeo Doubs. And he's probably too cheap. I'll give you that. Not excited about the ceiling, but like you said, doesn't have to hit super high heights to pay off at his price. So I think he's also worth looking into as well. Hope you guys have enjoyed this bonus clip from the factory tour. If you liked it, go check out the main episode. I talked with Matt for about an hour and 20 minutes about preseason week 1, about rookie running backs, and about the Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall signings. It was a great show. So go check that out. Obviously, subscribe to the channel as well, if you don't mind. We're trying to hit 500.
Hit subscribe.
Show Matt some love on Twitter at PsychWardFF. You can go follow him. You can follow me at Paul_DFF. And that's all for this week. We'll see you guys next time.